Hey guys, tonight we begin with the remarkable lives and incredible resilience of medieval peasants, the everyday heroes who, against impossible odds, endured the coldest, most brutal nights in human history. From makeshift insulation to communal sleeping strategies, their story is a testament to pure grit, desperate ingenuity, and ironclad determination. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the stories we uncover here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. It's always fascinating to see our community, scattered across the globe, coming together for history. Now, dim your lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Let's ease into tonight's journey together. When you think of medieval life, you might imagine jousting knights, grand feasts, and merry fairs. But for the average peasant, winter had nothing to do with merriment. It was a single, brutal question: how do we not die tonight? It wasn't just a season, it was an annual test of endurance, administered by a world that offered no second chances. Picture this. You're living in a tiny hut of mud and sticks with walls so thin you could hear a field mouse shiver from outside. No insulation, no windows, unless you count a small hole stuffed with stiff animal hide, and definitely no thermostat wars with your siblings. The temperature inside your home was merely a polite suggestion, a grudging degree or two above whatever hell the weather was unleashing outside. If it was freezing outdoors, it was politely freezing indoors. Congratulations. Nights were the true enemy. Darkness didn't just fall, it swallowed the world whole. The wind didn't blow, it howled like a chorus of angry ghosts. And the fire in your hearth? It sputtered pathetically, a brave little ember doing its best. Its main achievement was roasting the chilblained toes of whoever sat clawing closest. If you were on the other side of the room, sorry friend, you might as well have been camping in a field, just with worse snacks. Clothing wasn't much help either. Peasants didn't own fancy fur coats or goose-down blankets. You had a couple of rough-spun wool tunics, maybe a cloak that smelled suspiciously, profoundly of goat, and a desperate hope that layering them would transform you into a warm human onion. A spoiler, it didn't really work. And forget about snuggling under soft quilts. Your bed was often just a sack stuffed with hay or straw, maybe with a few old crunchy rushes thrown in for good measure. And as a bonus, a thriving community of fleas for extra company. Luxury, thy name was medieval peasant life. The cold wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a silent killer. Frostbite, hypothermia, freezing to death in your sleep, these were constant, lurking risks, especially for the young and the old. Every morning that you woke up still breathing, with feeling in your fingers, was considered a minor miracle, a victory worth celebrating, maybe with a slightly less frozen turnip for breakfast. So yes, surviving a medieval winter wasn't about comfort, it was about gritting your teeth until they ached, piling on every threadbare scrap you owned, huddling for dear life with your livestock, and praying you didn't wake up with actual icicles hanging from your eyebrows. And the real adventure? It was just beginning. If you think your apartment is drafty, medieval peasants would just shake their heads with a knowing, chattering smile. Their homes weren't just drafty, they were expertly designed wind tunnels with a roof. Most peasant houses were what historians politely call wattle and daub construction. Translation, a giant basket of sticks smeared with a charming plaster of mud, straw, and animal dung. Yes, dung. They weren't trying to be gross. Dung was a cheap, sticky insulator. Plus, it was always readily available. These walls, no matter how lovingly smeared, were no match for a proper winter gale. The wind found every crack, every gap, and gleefully invaded the one-room home, swirling around to make sure you never, ever felt warm. Privacy? None. Warmth? A myth. Character building? Absolutely. And then there were the roofs. Thatched roofs look picturesque, sure, but after months of rain and snow, they sagged, leaked, and occasionally invited in the local wildlife. Nothing says pleasant evening like a disoriented squirrel dropping onto your stew. Windows, if they existed, were laughably tiny, usually covered with thin animal hide or a wobbly wooden shutter. Glass was so expensive that even the local lord might only have a few panes. Peasants were just happy if the wind didn't rip the cowhide right off the wall mid-blizzard. To make matters worse, floors were often just hard-packed dirt. When it rained or snowed, dampness and mud seeped up from the ground, so technically you could say they had indoor water features, not that they appreciated it. In winter, every step inside your own home felt like trudging across a frozen swamp. It was a three-dimensional assault on your body heat. Cold from below, cold from the sides, cold seeping from above. But medieval peasants weren't the type to just whine. They fought back. They packed wall gaps with moss and lichen. They jammed precious rags into the worst drafts. They huddled close, becoming human insulation. Creativity, stubbornness, and a bit of sheep grease rubbed into the walls were often the only things standing between them and becoming medieval popsicles. Because if your best protection involved mud and goat hair, well, at least you could laugh about it. Sort of, if your teeth weren't chattering too hard. As if the freezing air wasn't enough, medieval peasants also battled a silent enemy rising from below them, the frozen ground itself. Floors weren't really floors. They were just the slightly flatter patch of earth inside your home. Maybe, if you were lucky, someone had thrown down a scattering of straw or old rushes to give the illusion of comfort. But make no mistake, you were sleeping one thin, itchy layer away from the cold, hard, unforgiving dirt. And that cold was relentless. It seeped up from the earth like a ghost, worming its way through the straw, into your bones, and straight into your very soul. If you dropped anything onto the floor during a winter night, congratulations, it was now part of the permanent permafrost collection. They fought this grim battle in a few ways. One method was laying thick mats of straw across the floor, if you could afford it, or, more realistically, if you could borrow enough from a neighbor's field without getting caught. But straw flattened fast, got moldy faster, and added a constant crunchy soundtrack to your already miserable nights. Some homes used dried rushes instead. Every so often, they'd throw fresh rushes on top without clearing the old ones. Over time, this created a fascinating archaeological layer of decomposing plants, fleas, and mystery creatures. It was basically medieval carpet dadding, if your carpet was alive, slightly damp, and smelled like a wet dog. Beds didn't solve much. They were usually simple wooden frames packed with, you guessed it, more straw or hay. Instead of a cozy mattress, you had a poking, shifting, crunchy nest that did little to stop the cold radiating from the frozen ground below. Tossing and turning wasn't about comfort. It was a desperate, awkward dance to keep blood flowing and avoid freezing one entire side of your body. The truth is, medieval peasants didn't conquer the icy ground. They just learned to survive uncomfortably above it. A good night's sleep wasn't about dreams. It was about waking up with all your toes still attached. And if you could pull that off, hey, you were doing better than most. If medieval homes had a single hero during winter, it wasn't the roof or the walls. It was the hearth, a crackling, stubborn fire pit that served as the only real defense against the cold, the darkness, and the soul-crushing gloom. At the center of nearly every home was a simple fire. No fancy stone fireplace, no chimney to sweep the smoke away, just a basic pit or ring of stones, some half-burned logs, and enough smoke pouring into the room to make you wonder if you were being slowly cured like a side of bacon. That's right, most homes didn't even have chimneys. Smoke just did its best. It drifted out through holes in the roof, cracks in the walls, or right into your lungs if it was feeling lazy. It wasn't ideal for breathing or your lifespan, but on the bright side, it did do a phenomenal job of fumigating fleas. Who needs pest control when you're being smoked 24/7? The hearth wasn't just about warmth. It was the kitchen, the only light source after sunset, and sometimes the medieval version of a television. People sat around it telling stories, gossiping, or just staring into the flames.